In this lesson, we're going to be talking about using void methods to perform important or at least useful tasks, not just to print headings like we did before. So let's get started with the problem. The problem is I have two variables, num1 and num2. I want to swap their values. How do I do that? Well, it's hard to do that with just using the two variables alone, because once I assign one value to the other variable, then I've lost that other variable's value, its original value. So what you have to do is you have to introduce a temporary variable. Now what we really want to do though is we want to create a method that does this, because we may need to use a swap routine many times in a program. For example, in a sorting program, swap will be used many times to move values around from higher to lower or from lower to higher, however you're ordering your data. So we want to create a swap program, and it has to be a void method because we're working with two values. A value returning method can only return one value. Right off the bat, we know this method has to be void, and we'll call it swap. We'll have two parameters. We'll make both of them integers, number1 and number2. We introduce a third variable into the program, temp, and assign it the value of number1. Then we assign the value of number2 to number1, and then we assign the value of temp to number2. I have two variables with the same name. There we go. So now we're ready to use the program. So the first thing we're going to do is write out the two values for num1 and num2. Then we'll swap them like so. Then we'll print them out again. And then we're finished. So we'll have a console read key right here. So notice what happens. Swap gets the arguments num1 and num2, performs a swap, and then we should have two new values, or two swapped values. However, when we're finished, we see they're the same. The reason why they're the same is because when we pass data into a method, that data is passed by value. And what that means is that we're passing a copy of the parameters, number1 and number2, to the method. And that copy is something stored in memory. But once the method is over, then those values are erased, and what we're left with are the original values as stored in the variables. So what we call this, let me put a comment right here so you can see it, is pass by value. What we really want to do is we want to be able to pass data into a method so that instead of working with copies, we're working with the data as it's stored in a memory location. And we can actually do that quite simply by creating what are called reference parameters. And it's very easy to do. I'm going to make a copy of this method. Then I'm going to comment out the old method, paste it back in, and make the change that we need to make. What we want to do to make number1 and number2 reference parameters is put the keyword ref in front of each of those. Now they become reference parameters. We have to modify these arguments so that they are sent to the method as reference arguments. So to do that, we put the keyword ref in front of num1 and num2. Now when we run the program, you see that they swapped. Num1 is 1, num2 is 2 in the beginning, and now num1 is 2, and num2 is 1. The reason they swapped is because when we worked with reference parameters in the method call, we were working with actual memory locations and not copies of values stored in memory locations as we did when we were working with pass by value. Now this method right here, let me add one little change here. It's a comment. This is called pass by reference. And we need that when we want the values of the arguments or the parameters to change. Let's say the parameters. When we want the values of the parameters to change permanently, then we need to pass by reference using the keyword ref, and we have to use the keyword ref in our method call with the arguments. Passing by reference does not come up all that often, at least not in an introductory programming context. Swap is one of the few examples where you absolutely have to pass by reference to make it work. There are other more advanced uses of passing by reference, but in general, and especially with value returning methods, you want to pass by value. It's not considered that good of style to constantly have methods modifying its argument's values. Only in special cases like swap is it okay. Having said that, we're now ready to move to the exercises for this chapter, where we look at, in this first exercise, 3 different method examples to give you some idea of the flexibility and usefulness of methods.